Good afternoon, and I get in trouble when I say this because somebody on the West Coast is going to say, but it's only morning. And by the way, that was Rob Chrisman who called me out on that before. So at least now I'm going to acknowledge the fact that it is afternoon. Good morning, good night if you're, in Bermuda or something. So welcome to Advisory Angle from the Chrisman Commentary. We appreciate the opportunity to be here. This is yet another consecutive month. So we've done this, gosh, at least 6 times by now. Sue Woodard is not with us, but I have my colleague, Nicole, who's going to be sharing some information from our Tech Insight study. So we do these advisory angles and we share data, the data that we're able to share with the industry that we aggregate from lenders. So, we do our peer group program in partnership with the Mortgage Bankers Association. That's how did lenders perform? We have customer satisfaction data we've shared in the past. So how do customers perceive processes? This one is really what lenders feel about their technology and most notably their migration on the digital roadmap or digital innovation survey. So that is really the purpose of this. What features have been implemented and what is the adoption of various features on an end-to-end view of a digital mortgage. So go ahead, Nicole. I think, is this your first one you've done with me in this format?
It is not. I believe we have done, I think we did the other technology insight study, the other module, which is lender intelligence.
Oh, okay, got it.
And so this is my second.
Okay, excellent. Well, you still have to introduce yourself.
Happy to be invited back. So if you weren't on the earlier one, I'm Nicole Young. I'm a partner here at STRATMOR Group. I have been at STRATMOR going on 20 years now, obviously 20 plus years of experience in the business. I do a variety of things at STRATMOR, from work on the MBA STRATMOR PGR peer group roundtable program, and then also run and have for about the last decade run the STRATMOR Insight Study, Technology Insight Study. And so happy to share with the results today. Some of the highlights from digital innovations. So let me just set the stage a little bit on what the Technology Insight Study is. So it is a lender-only study. We've been doing it since 2014. We have 2 modules: lender intelligence, which is what's the tech stack, what are the SAT scores, how likely are lenders to stay on that system. That's not what we're going to cover today. Today we're covering digital innovation. So that's digital capabilities, lenders' perceived benefits and barriers. And then we've got a special section to talk about automations, a little bit on AI. Just for context, we do the digital survey in the last quarter of the year, so that when we talk about what happened for 2024, we really want to catch as much adoption in digital implementation as we can through the year. So this was conducted over the last quarter of 2024. That's why we just released it in March of this year.
So by the way, for those of you who know me, Garth Graham, also a partner at STRATMOR Group. One thing I will say, I do a lot of public speaking and we do an awful lot of this, and rarely do I get a chance to speak without using data put together by Nicole. So I'm the chief storyteller and the leverage of the data. So I like to tell stories about it, but Nicole's the one who actually produces all the material. So you get it straight from the source.
That's right. Okay, great. So thanks, Garth. And that's why I set up a little bit what we're going to look at here. So let's talk about what I think is super interesting out of this data is we've asked lenders, what are their perceived benefits of digital and their perceived barriers? So, why are lenders going after different digital and different technology, and what's holding them back? So here's the top benefits and barriers for this year. So the top one, perceived benefits, and notice it's perceived, right? It's not, nobody did a study. This is a lender opinion. But the perceived benefits of digital: increased borrower SAT, greater task flow and automation, faster cycle times, enhanced productivity, right? LO and fulfillment, and then increased loan quality. And what are the barriers, right? Cost is a barrier. Data security is a barrier. Getting the LOs to change their behavior, definitely an issue. And then managing new technologies. So I'll pause here, Garth, to see if there's anything here that's surprising.
Well, I think that the interesting piece, and we're about to show a slide, by the way, the next slide is going to show some trends, and I think the trends are super interesting. The one, though, that strikes me always is that one at the top, is that we say, hey, the biggest item I'm trying to focus is make a better borrower experience and better levels of borrower satisfaction. And the one challenge I do to lenders is I say, okay, if that's really the primary reason are you doing it, how are you measuring the results? Because if you're not measuring it at a deep results, you're not really going to know. I mean, are the borrowers overall satisfied? Or if you do know, it's going to be like a really lagging indicator. Like 3 years from now, you'll say, you know, I've done pretty well growing market share. So therefore, my investments I made in a digital mortgage had an impact. Well, maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But the point is, if that's your number one, is what the industry says, you ought to be measuring it, which we can do a separate advisory angle on the how, but you ought to be measuring that at a discrete level. So that I'm not surprised about that element being number one. It's just a challenge that people got to take seriously if that is indeed number one. And then the other item is really a point of ROI. If you look at the number one barrier, it's okay, the cost is high. Well, that cost, the challenge I always say to people is you shouldn't pay for anything that's not driving value. So you have to be able to tie the cost to an ROI. And I think that is where you see adoption being a big part of it. Because if you pay for a technology or a technology enhancement or a feature within a system, but you don't get high adoption, you're not going to get a high ROI. So thus the cost is high. So it's a little bit that is a package deal, as I mentioned in previous ones, that you have to drive the level of change to ensure adoption in order to make it worth it to pay the cost in the first place.
That's right. That's right. Let's look at some trends.
This is like fascinating.
Oh, so now that I flip to the trends, I noticed that this is the 23, not the 24 slide. So if you will hold for just a minute, I opened the wrong file. So I'm going to stop. I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm going to
press there.
Garth.
Yeah, I think the other one, by the way, one of the barriers that was on there was getting the user to change. And, you know, I am always commented that it's changes people, process, and technology. So these are which of these features are being implemented and do you have some level of adoption? We consistently will see with a user, sometimes the LO, sometimes it's the processor, the users will not embrace the technology. And sometimes, by the way, to be fair, maybe the training wasn't there. Maybe the vendor makes it too hard. You know, we always use the example of saying, how much training did you need for your iPhone? You know, if it's super well designed and intuitive, you don't need nearly as much training to adopt it. And then 3 is, do you have the incentive to do it? Meaning a loan officer or processor, whoever it is, who's given the incentives either through dashboards or gamification of saying, we're going to support this feature, you know, are more likely to get success deploying that feature. And we consistently see in these results, because we ask the question, A, have you implemented this type of feature? And B, what is your adoption? And while we see a clear trend in how much lenders have implemented a technology, we see very inconsistent on the level of adoption. And this is the same technology. So you have the same technology implemented in 2 different lenders, one of whom has high and one of whom has low adoption, and the average is somewhere in the middle. But why is the highs? And it's normally the people in the process is much better focus on the implementation. So go ahead.
Now all right, thanks. Thanks, Garth. Thanks, Garth, for covering for me.
Yeah, no problem.
So so if we go back to the slide we looked at before, it looks slightly different because this is the 24. The other one, unfortunately, I opened the one that was last year's. But you can see there's a little bit of movement, right? We were looking at top at borrower satisfaction, actually for 2024, what has displaced increased borrower satisfaction at the top is greater task, service, order, and automation. So this is a shift that we saw for coming, for 2024. And I think this is really about where we are in the market, right? So in 2023, increased borrower satisfaction, right, was the top of the list, right? That was the number one perceived benefit. But it's been displaced here by greater task automation, faster cycle times, and enhanced fulfillment productivity. And I think that's really about where lenders are in this market, right? 2024, it's a year of absorbing all the changes that happened in late 22 and into 23. And where lenders are really focused on is efficiency. And they certainly still care about borrower satisfaction, right? It's not like it fell off the list. It's certainly high on the list because we have increased borrower satisfaction and increased transparency for borrowers. So still very important. But if we look, it's about automation, about cycle times, and about productivity enhancements. So that's really been the shift with lenders, is looking to digital for a pickup in efficiency.
Yeah, I think obviously productivity is a big driver. As the market's gotten tougher, margins get tighter. We consistently hear, we heard it in peer group for the dozens of lenders we've met in the last month, and Nicole, how do I make myself more productive? How do I make myself more productive?
And yes, automation. And that's why I've got the slides here specifically about some of the bigger automations so that we can look at trends, because I think that's such a big hot button and focus for lenders. So why are lenders, what are the barriers, right? Why are they not doing digital? Well, cost still at the top. So cost was at the top of the list for 23. It's still at the top of the list for 2024. Obviously it's a challenging market, right? We're still getting back to sort of a cyclical purchase market from coming off years of big refinance booms. And so cost and again, ROI are big concerns for lenders. Interestingly, we then have a couple of items about adoption, right? Getting difficulty of LOs to change behavior, lack of internal adoption. So at number 2 and number 5. And this, this speaks to one, a lot of digital innovation has been focused at the front end of the process. That's why LOs get a specific call out here, is having LOs use the new technology. Some of that is about the LO, some of it's frankly about the lender and about their own rolling out of new technologies and their own implementation and training related to that. But we still see, again, getting adoption being a barrier to digital. And then we've got 2 here that are about their own internal IT development capabilities, right? System and vendor integration requirements. So just managing the complexity of these sort of, we now talk about an ecosystem, right? There's a whole ecosystem of mortgage technology, and being able to have the right capabilities internally, and then also being able to manage the vendor and integration requirements to make sure all those systems work together is definitely a barrier. I think especially in the light of always being looking at cost and at cost control.
Excellent.
Great. And then is someone keeping an eye on chat to see if there's questions coming in?
I'm watching it. Yeah. Feel free to
great, thanks.
chat, everybody, but yeah.
Okay, good. So that's to me, I like to start with this because I think it sets the stage where lenders are, kind of what are their concerns, what are they looking for pickups from digital. So let's talk about digital capabilities. So within the TIS Digital Innovations Survey, we ask about 56. We're at 56 digital capabilities now. I would bet when we roll the 2025 out, we will add maybe 10 because there's so much innovation happening. But for 2024, we had 56 capabilities. They were bucketed into 8 separate categories: borrower engagement, price and product, application, processing, appraisal and agency, closing, post-closing, and then a broader general customer experience. So for each of the 56, as someone's taking the survey, they're asked to tell us where they are along the process. Are they live with that capability? Are they in testing? Is it on the roadmap? Not on the roadmap, but interested, not on the roadmap, and not interested. So for the most part, what we are going to look at here, we're going to look at some of the top, what are live, right? So if we look, the top 10 live digital capabilities for 2024. Okay, so here's the list, and I'll pause so that we all can take a minute to look at it. And then you'll note at the bottom, digital capabilities are concentrated in the front end of the origination process.
Sure, literally, that's where we started. So so online disclosures has almost become ubiquitous. This is not, by the way, the adoption level. This is, do you have it live? The adoption stuff is, a subsequent set of, are we showing that? Yeah, we're showing the
I don't know. I don't have the
live.
adoption because that gets into all 56, and I want us to talk about some capabilities. So I have it if we want to go to any of them.
Yeah, so I'll make comments on that as we go through. But the online disclosures, 9 out of 10 lenders have it on some levels, so you can get your disclosures online. Sometimes it's generated automatically, sometimes asynchronously, meaning there might be 2 steps, but you can execute, and that's become a standard. And I think it became a standard because of IT, the ITP rule. You had to get an answer. Are you okay with this? So you had to embrace technology to push it to them, which means you had to, suddenly there's a catalytic mechanism to drive a piece of technology because it drives the process as really a result of regulation, meeting the intent to proceed. The ability to get the borrower's documents up front became standard with the point of sale. Having a dynamic online app, a wizard-style app, what Blend pioneered X number of years ago, and others have done as well. The agency ULDD stuff is kind of a something you have to do. It's yet another requirement. Therefore, you have technology to do it. 3 out of 4 lenders have some sort of mobile digital experience. By the way, when we ask lenders here, they will often answer this question. Does not necessarily mean it's a mobile app. From their perception, it's a mobile digital experience. It doesn't necessarily mean, they all have a mobile app. It may be that it's, mobile responsive, or, a link on a mobile that takes you to an online or something. Most lenders have, now we're over 50%, income data services, income and employment information, bank data services, and then some level of automated reminders for the consumer through the process, meaning status, saying, hey, we still need your pay stub, that type of thing. Those are the top 10. I would say it's not the front of the process, top of the funnel. It's kind of the middle of the funnel. So what's interesting here, and if you look at what's on borrower engagement, which I'll talk about in a second, borrower engagement is a lot of stuff that's before every one of these 10. So it's like the point of sale and the adoption of the point of sale and the success of the point of sale is driven these as still being top 10, which means everything else is sort of lagging below that 69% live percentage.
That's right. So let's look at where are we gaining? Where are the biggest gains, right? And so these are the top 5 biggest gains we saw year over year. So income data service has really taken a big leap up. That's been something that a lot of lenders have moved into live capability. Online approvals, right? So having some way to deliver an online approval. Online disclosures, again, that has that's real, is common, but it's being pushed even more. It's been at the top of, at the top of the list of live capabilities, but we see even more lenders implementing some online disclosure capability. Borrower uploading documents. I think this has been around for a long time, but I think some of the new technology, that's out there between the POS and some of the LOS makes this a lot easier. So we see this jump 11 percentage points. And then interesting, here's our first entry into closing, right? That's not in, I said front end, but you're right, Garth. It's really in that middle section. It's not filling the funnel, but it's once you have a borrower in the funnel, sort of taking the application through processing has been at the heart of where a lot of the capabilities have been focused and a lot of the innovation. But for the first time, we see e-notary here in closing be one of the largest gains in live digital. Now, it doesn't put it into the top 10. Some of these, the gains push them into the top 10, some of them not, but we're still seeing gains here. But if we look, we're still focused on that sort of, not on the middle, right? Application, processing. So it's still about the borrower experience, right? So if we hearken back to what the benefits are, task flow, automation, workflow, increased productivity, and borrower satisfaction and experience, makes sense that this is where a lot of the energy is focused, right? Is in that application process and getting that loan processed, right? For a better experience.
Yeah. I think, by the way, we did get one chat question. Hey, what percent of lenders, how big were the lenders that you survey? We don't have to show the slide, but roughly 40% were under $1 billion, 60% were above. So it's pretty representative of the market. 20% is between 1 and 2 billion, 15% 2 to 5 billion, 12% of the survey responses were between 5 and 10 billion, and 8% were over 10. It is pretty much the market. So it was a very representative sample. It includes a wide range. It includes both independent and banks at roughly a 50-50 split. By the way, lender who participated in the program is entitled to get the entire results. So if anybody wants to put in, well, either put it in the chat or send us an email separately or something, and we'll go ahead and try to get you the full results.
That's right. I will release results to the people who took the survey. Right. So if you take the survey, I will ask for contact information. And so they have full copies of those results. Yeah. But if you're interested, I can cross-reference that your company took it, and happy to send it along. Yeah. So one thing I'll go ahead and somebody else asked a question. Hello, Brandy. Asked a question that was, what exactly do you mean by digital capability? And a digital capability is primarily designed around trying to create a view, and it's STRATMOR's view of 56 items that make up a digital mortgage. It is the ability to self-serve and receive automated processes to support the end-to-end result. It does not mean there's a human not in the loop, but it's the ability to have a dynamic application, get automatic reminders, see price and product automatically, execute your disclosures online. That is what we're sort of trying to create around this digital view. When you see the full survey, which by the way is 50 some slides, I think, it breaks out these categories in a lot of detail. So like borrower engagement, which is the top of the funnel, has 10 items that we survey. So do you have an ability for loan officers to market on social media? Is one borrower engagement capability. Do you have lead management nurturing? Do you let the borrower select the contact method for which he wants to be, or he or she wants to interact with, text, etc.? Do you support enterprise text? Do you track all contacts within a system, regardless of the type of contact, voice, email, text, etc.? Do you provide automatic status updates? Do you have abandoned application follow-ups? Do you have LO collaboration where they can share a screen? And do you have referral collaboration with realtors? That is 10, just to give you a quick example, Brandy, that is 10 digital capabilities within just one of the 8 categories, borrower engagement. And every other one of them is just as fascinating. That's right. All right, Brandy, you got to give me an amen for that. Have lenders mandated adoption of any digital tools beside POS, LOS? That is a very interesting question. Every lender has one LOS. Rarely do we see 2. So certainly it is easier to say
here is the solution and capabilities within the LOS that you need to use. Then you begin to get lenders who will have multiple POSs, although still normally just one.
Mhm.
Then you end up with the CRM, I'm going up funnel, where suddenly you have multiples. And so it gets a little trickier. The best lenders embrace people, process, and technology to drive change. I repeat myself frequently on this topic. And that includes the people part of this may include a mandate. This is important. This is what I want. I'm going to judge you on whether or not you embrace this, and I'd like you to do it. And, sometimes it's a carrot. I'll give you incentives. Sometimes it's a stick, and sometimes it's a gamification. But there's some level of driving the employees to embrace it, because if the employees embrace it, they can get the consumers normally to embrace it too.
That's right.
What we do not see is consumers not being willing to adopt digital capabilities. They may not remember their password of their Bank of America account the first time through their point of sale, and may not choose to share assets. Or they may not choose to share assets because they don't trust you yet. But a good salesperson is going to revisit and say, how come you didn't share the asset information? The process is a heck of a lot better when you do. You don't have to download the bank statements. A good salesperson sells the consumer through the adoption. They are not natively disinclined to not use this technology. They are not. What it is it hasn't been explained to them. It's not designed in a really easy way. It's not been reinforced, whatever it might be. That's where we see, which I think is why so many say an obstacle, or one of the key obstacles, is getting the internal users to adopt it. So Alan, I don't know if that addressed your question, but that's I was trying to address it, and I think your question was in the chat here.
Yeah, thanks, Garth. Yeah, I do. And I do think that there are cases where lenders do in fact take the choice out of it, right? That just becomes their workflow. The other thing that I would say, and this is going back to some of the peer group meetings that we were in, the PGR meetings, we definitely had folks that are making e-closing, right? Hybrid and e-closing the standard. So instead of opting in to do e-closing, you have to opt out. And if you can set your system up that way, and again, that it's not a choice to opt in, it's an opt out only. They were seeing some real success there. So I definitely think that there are other systems beyond just POS and LOS that are mandated. I think there are lenders that are working through that with some of the closing systems as well.
Yeah.
But so we've been talking about biggest gains in digital, right? And the push forward of digital, and we've seen this huge influx. Like, we've already 56 seems like a lot. I would be shocked if we're not at 70 next year, right? There's so much digital coming along. But interestingly, we have seen, we don't see forward progress on all of them. So everything is not gung-ho, everything to the races. Over the course of 22 to 23 and then into 24, we do have drops in digital, right? So some of this is likely due to sample, right? Who took the survey last year, who didn't take the survey, but we have a pretty representative sample in all years that we take it, of large, small, bank, independent, credit union, across the gamut. But we do see, and we have seen drops in certain capabilities, that there are certain capabilities that lenders are pulling back on.
Yeah, by the way, so the biggest drop there is pre-approval letter at the bottom, right? So why would that be? Well, our observation, it is lenders choosing. It is not a degradation. It's not that the functionality suddenly went away. The lenders are choosing to turn it off because in order to generate pre-approval letters, it often requires a significant amount of services, credit, hard or soft. Income analysis, or one of the asset verification, getting them to opt in, sharing for verification of employment. Those are all costs, which then layer on to the experience on a pre-approval, which in our current market, because of pull-through being so low, inventory challenges, interest rates going up, whatever, makes it that the lender says, I can't afford to keep cranking out automated pre-approvals. Now, as somebody who's been watching digital for decades and, started a digital mortgage company, mortgage.com in 1996, I find that really painful. And I find it painful because we're certainly not improving the borrower's experience, purpose number one, by removing automation capabilities from our suite of offerings to them. There's no way we can say, oh, we gave a higher level of customer satisfaction, or we're making the process more productive, which was our top two, goals, by removing an online pre-approval letter. The problem is it's all the cost of those services. And if you look at our borrower engagement numbers, do you have a efficient automated way to follow up on pre-approvals for long periods of time? That's really what's broken. It's the services are high, and we're welcome the credit bureaus and the other providers to dramatically cut their costs in order to, spike this number right back up. I could wave my magic wand, but I think that is really the problem associated with that number. It does not surprise me. We meet with lenders, they're turning some of this stuff off because it costs money.
Yeah, and it was really interesting when we first started to see this coming into a little bit into the end of 22 and into 23. It was a little bit surprising because every year it had been like a slow, steady, everything was sort of inching up. It was like a slow, steady march. But I do think if we harken back to what are the biggest barriers, right? It's about costs. Yeah. And so a lot of these are about costs, things like data integrity and post-closing. Well, that's likely an outsourced service. And we're in a pretty low repurchase environment. We've probably got a lot of loans that come with agency approvals that come through them. And so why am I going to pay an extra service? So it's not that the capability doesn't work or there's not value, but it's that ROI cost benefit discussion that lenders have to go through. And again, Garth, I teed this up specifically so that you could talk about pre-approval letters, because there are cases where, and it's not the cases that the technology isn't working, but sometimes the costs and the downstream implications, again, people process technology, that sometimes the process around that just doesn't make sense, doesn't make economic sense.
Yeah. By the way, the other, and I know we weren't going to cover all the adoption related items, right, Nicole?
No, I wasn't going to go through all 56 just because in the interest of time. And I want to talk about, I've got some slides about bots and about AI. I thought we might talk about automations a little bit.
Yeah. So while you cue that up, let me make this comment. In our actual digital survey, which is pretty in-depth, as I said, 8 areas, 56 categories, we say, what % of lenders have this live? That's what we just showed you. The other thing that we have is adoption. And the thing I want to point out is that the level of adoption of that feature generally ranges from the lows of 20-some% to roughly 80%. Mm-hmm. The only reason I point it out is if lenders are only 50% of lenders offer a feature, or 60%, but it's only being used 50% of the time. Look at enterprise text as an example. That means the net adoption for an industry is 15%. That is a great one right there. 28% of lenders say they have an enterprise text solution to offer to borrowers, meaning a single text solution, of which half the borrowers use it, or it's used on half the loans, whatever that might be. So the net is 15%. So I would challenge the industry by saying, what % of people in the loan process use text? Can I get 100%? Can I get a 90? I mean, come on. We all text. We text each other. Hell, I've got a text from 3 people on this call in the last 10 minutes saying, hey, Garth, good to see you. People use text. So only 28% of lenders, 3 out of 10, have an enterprise text solution, yet We know 100% of people practically are using text. That is a big missed opportunity. So that was a point number one. But point number two is because you launched the feature, the average user adoption is in this range, but we see big, wide disparities in our numbers as well. So part
That's
of what
right.
we do with clients is say, I'm at 20. I'm like, well, the industry average is 60, best in class is 80. Let's get you from 20 to 80 because it means something to you and drives an ROI. That's how we use the data.
That's right.
So we're, appreciate the chance to share it with you. So yeah, let's look at some of those bots and automation and AI stuff.
Okay, I'm gonna go back.
Yeah.
Sorry to see a little behind the scenes here. So let's talk about automations because, right, we saw that as one of the biggest benefits. It's about automation. It's about workflow. I think that was the talk of lenders and of peer group meetings as we've been out with clients. Everybody's looking to automate and to use technology. There's so much new technology out there. So where we really started to see a pickup or one of the first big automations are RPA, robotic process automations, or bots, right? So as of the end of 2024, slightly less than half, 48% of lenders said they're using some kind of bot in the process. And it's primarily in processing. 60% are using it, 59% in processing. We're also getting some bot in the IT side. So on the corporate side, disclosures, underwriting, servicing, right? And then again, some bots being used in corporate functions, accounting and compliance. So I think that is a really interesting use case. And so about half of lenders are using some kind of automation.
By the way, the largest cost associated with a mortgage is sales, yet there's hardly any bots being used in the sales process, at least in our survey. However, I would say that is likely to change with some of the big investments. It won't change initially, but if you look at what Rocket, Better, and some of the other advanced lenders are doing related to top of funnel, a lot of it is bots and AI to replicate some part of the top of funnel sales function, which does not mean replace the salesperson. It just means enhance maybe the experience that somebody might get through an online or digital environment, or even in interacting with a salesperson.
That's right. So we ask folks that of that group that are using bots, do you develop internally or using a vendor? So it's about half and half here again. In 2019, we first started asking, 75% of the lenders were using a vendor. Now lenders are starting to develop capability in-house to develop and maintain their own bots. So this is really an interesting slide. So we ask this time, what is your expectation on usage of bots? Are you going to expect to increase, stay the same, or decrease? 47% said they expect to increase their use of RPAs, right? So we're going to continue, again, think about back to the benefits. It's about task flow, automation, right? Efficiency. They expect to increase. Well, and then we asked of the people who said they're going to increase their use of RPAs, why? Because now they have the internal capability to build and maintain their bots, right? So lenders have been, over the course of the last 5 or 6 years, building that capability. So they feel good about it. They have capability. They have people to maintain it. So that's what they're going to increase. They're getting positive ROI on that, 47%. They feel like the LOS is not offering the level of automation that they need. And so they're really pushing to get the automation by using bots. And then their 11% said they expected to decrease their use of RPAs. Well, why are they going to decrease? Well, it's not because they don't like automation. It's because now some of the LOS offer native automations. So before they were building bots on top of their LOS, and now some of the LOS now offer native automations. So we're certainly seeing a push there of having those things come through the LOS. Some are not realizing the ROI, and then they also are decreasing because it's the other side of this coin is they don't have the capability. And so that's one of the things, if you're looking at bots, we're certainly seeing increase of usage, people that implement them correctly and have designed the people process technology around it, definitely see ROI. But one of the things that we hear is that you really have to have internal capability to understand how to maintain those RPAs, because as new releases come out, as you integrate something else in the system, as things change within your ecosystem, sometimes those bots will break, and they have to be sort of repaired and re-hooked up to all the capabilities within the system. So that's my takeaway from this, is one of the ways to really get the ROI on bots is to have an internal capability to build and maintain.
Yeah, you just need to be. One of my favorites is looking at a client who had built 38 different bots, I think. I don't know if the 38 is the right number, but it was big. But one of them was the bot to manage the bots. And what it was literally a bot that scoured the dashboard to say if the bots were working up, down, if the ins and outs were correct, and then would automatically notify people when the bots went down. So it was a bot of the bots. I was like, okay, that's like classic.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
So here we'll end on what I think is the hottest topic in mortgage banking, or maybe just in general these days, which is AI. So AI, at the end of 2024, 38% of lenders said they were using some kind of AI or machine learning. It was primarily developed using a third-party solution for AI. We know that some of the LOS have some AI capabilities built in, 17%, and then other ones are using open source AI and building their own capability. So of the AI usage, what are lenders doing with AI, right? So the number one, document classification and indexing, and then document reading. So those are some of the capabilities that I know some of the LOS have built in, right? So they're letting AI go through and classify, index, and read documents. The next big use case, and we heard this a lot too, we hear this a lot with lenders, is using some sort of AI on top of their own internal communication and guidelines. And so instead of searching through all those the guidelines, right, you sort of ask your chat GPT or whatever AI assistant you have, to go and to help you find that information within the internal communications, internal manuals. And then we're getting some underwriting. There's a little bit of automating customer interactions. That's interesting. I think we'll see that grow. And then the other two, which when we first started surveying this in 2023, these two were at the top of the funnel. Identifying opportunities, targeting potential customers. AI was all about filling the funnel, and it's sort of flipped now to be a little bit more on the back end. But I think that's been a really interesting change of how AI has been changing within the industry. And frankly, I think this is an area where we're going to see rapid change and rapid deployment of AI capabilities.
Yeah. So I'd go ahead, and I think that was your last slide, right, Nicole?
That's it.
So my one comment I'll make on AI is I spoke at the ICE conference. I speak every year. AI mostly was anchored around what I was in that processing and underwriting. You literally just saw it on the slide. And the processing underwriting is we automatically identify a document. We automatically pull data to extract from it. And lots of use cases, lots of vendors. If you're interested, send me an email or note, happy to share. The big piece that we saw last year at the ICE conference is I saw at least a half a dozen vendors who showed me something top of funnel. And they even have the term for it, the category is agentic AI, agent AI. And this is, by the way, being led by some pretty big lenders who talk openly about it in their investor items. So, I'll comment on it. And that would be Rocket and Better. And Rocket and Better are replicating what a human might do when they talk to a consumer to take a loan application, or they explain price and product using AI to drive that process. If anybody wants details, just feel free to reach out. Don't have time to run through the whole thing here. But it is shifting to top of funnel. There's more being done on top of funnel. Your last slide, Nicole, was right on the money. It was 15%. Was in the top of funnel somewhere. I bet a year from now, that number is going to be much, much higher. And the reason is because I already pointed out, and somebody already jumped on the chat to say, comment on it. And that is the vast majority of the cost, or the majority of the cost, I shouldn't say the vast majority, the majority of our expense in mortgage banking is top of funnel and sales. So, if indeed that's the case, then that's the best opportunity for ROI. Getting back to, we're spending a lot of money on digital capabilities and they cost as an obstacle. Well, the cost is worth it if the ROI is there. Well, the ROI is going to be a lot higher if it's anchored on something that drives revenue or where most of the expense is buried. So I am bullish on some of the AI items that we see. I also strongly encourage you on the phone, if you're not using AI somehow, even to test and learn, you ought to be. Sign up for Microsoft Copilot. It's like, by the way, we did an advisory angle a month or two ago on AI. So watch that one off our website or in this YouTube channel. But, sign up for it. It's $30 a month. I mean, it's like, come on, try it for $30 a month and learn what Microsoft Copilot can do real time with you, encrypting notes or calling customers through Teams if your company allows it, and then getting a transcript and a summary of the call. You'll be blown away. When we do calls, we try to transcribe them all. And when I make stupid jokes, the AI is smart enough not to include it. It knows it knows it was not part of the conversation. It doesn't try to explain it. It doesn't summarize it. It just says, okay, that guy did some stupid joke and nobody laughed, and it leaves it out of the notes. I mean, that alone tells you how valuable it is. You wouldn't have to listen to me tell dumb jokes if you just read the transcript that takes those jokes right out of there.
That's
right. In any case, I think that's kind of my last comment on it. Nicole, I wasn't sure we'd have 30 minutes worth of material on this. My God, we went 48. So
yes, so sorry. Well, some of that's because
awesome.
I unfortunately opened the wrong slide deck. So
don't even worry about that.
I think we recovered. I will say this. So thank you, for all the questions on the side. I've been reviewing the chat here now that I don't have my screen up. I think there's some great comments and points here. We will find a way to provide the deck. So I'm happy to share the deck with the folks that are on the call, because I know we sort of, we went through some of these kind of fast. I also will ask you this. Is that, we talked about the beginning, there's 2 modules onto the Tech Insights survey. So we just opened the lender intelligence. So it's not this digital. It will ask you like, what systems are you on? How happy are you on it? And are you likely to stay? So if you have a few minutes, the link is in the chat of the lender intelligence survey. If you have a few minutes, I'd really appreciate your feedback on that. And then we will likely come on in the fall when we have the results back from lender intelligence and talk about what systems people are using.
That's awesome. So I guess our plan will be early June will be our next advisory angle. Of course, you can rewatch them all on the Chrisman Commentary YouTube page. And we appreciate the opportunity to be with you virtually today. Thank you.
Thank you.